Sakura usually isn't thought of as much more than a healer. When she's in her starting class, all she can do is heal, and getting her to do more than that would involve a slow trudge to level 10, without the option to attack and get kills. She's still one of the best support units in the game if she stays in that role, but we're playing Fates. Units in this game don't have to be held back in their starting classes, and if you're able to route your playthrough to allow you to get Sakura into Paladin, she will end up plowing through the game faster than any other unit, besides Corrin, but that includes Ryoma. Joining me today is the person that got me to see the true potential of this build, Scepti, an incredibly skilled Fates challenge runner and one of the most knowledgeable people about the game as a whole. So let's go over everything about Sakura and her place in Birthright. Sakura is one of the earlier units that you recruit in Birthright, coming even before Birthright starts in Chapter 5 during the Branch of Fate. She starts as a level 1 Shrine Maiden, and she starts with E rank in Staves, which means she can only really use the Bloom Festal for healing, not even the Sun Festal, unless she gets to 20 staff uses.
People bring up the E-rank staves a lot, but I don't think it's that huge of a deal, mostly because the most important staff in all 3 routes is Rescue, and it's E-rank. And staves for healing are one of the saddest sources of healing. Like, the Bloom Festal in particular is pathetic. I just feel like the Sun Festal is actually that much better than a concoction. In fact, I'd argue it's worse for most of the game. So I'm largely just not positive on Staves as a whole, so I don't think E-rank Staves is that big of a downside on Sakura.
The problem with being staff locked in Fates is that the faster you end up playing, the worse the staff lock becomes to get out of. Because if you're clearing maps faster, that means your units are being sent out further into the front lines away from your starting positions, which means Sakura is going to have some trouble catching up to your damaged units and actually healing them. And you'll also have even fewer turns to get that staff spamming in to get to those 20 uses. Starting at E rank is really not ideal if you're planning on playing at a very fast pace, which I know most people that are playing Birthright are not going to be playing at LTC pace, but that is something to keep in mind.
Yeah. But like, even if she had D rank, it wouldn't help. She'd still be stuck in the back line, struggling to find heal targets. It's just a product of being staff locked. It is so unfortunate, not necessarily the E rank. But yeah, being staff locked is miserable. You've shown off the using an HP tonic turn 1 to get a tiny bit of extra healing in, and its staff EXP is so bad that that is a significant amount of EXP compared to what you normally get.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Although, you mentioned before that Sakura is better off in the backlines, but her personal skill says otherwise. It is Quiet Strength. Allies within 2 spaces take -2 damage, and that is kind of huge, especially in early game for playing a lot more aggressively. If you want to send out units like Orochi or Hana, other frail units, Quiet Strength is huge because taking 2 less damage from every single enemy that's coming at them can really add up when you have HP totals as low as you have in Fates.
Yeah, it's one of the best personal skills in the game, even not just for the frailer units, but like if you're a bulky unit like Corrin or Celeste, then you're taking, 5 enemies in one enemy phase, and then Quiet Strength is adding up to 10 damage reduced at that point, which is, probably half your HP or something close to it. It's one of the best personal skills in the game. I think it justifies her deployment for an incredibly long time off of Quiet Strength alone.
It does technically, in some very edge cases, have negative synergy with being staff locked, because if you end up accidentally applying Quiet Strength and getting a unit's damage taken to 0, then you don't have a heal target that turn.
Yeah. Fortunately, she doesn't have Elise's problem of 0 damage applying, getting you to be ignored, because Birthright doesn't do that. And because it's 2 range, you don't have to worry about her stealing full strikes. It's fantastic.
So there are definitely situations where it can allow you to make more aggressive plays. It makes Orochi really good at one-rounding Oni Savages in her joining map, Chapter 8. Thanks to Quiet Strength and either a defense tonic or Jacob's Aura, she can just take on 3 of them on a single enemy phase, kill them all, and gain experience a lot faster that way compared to the alternative. Really helps enable you to play more aggressively, especially with units that otherwise have more difficulty getting experience.
Right, and it's still a fantastic skill, even if you don't want to push out aggressively. If you are being extremely conservative, then having that 2 extra damage is always going to keep you safe. It doesn't matter what context you're playing the game in, it's amazing.
Yeah. 2 less damage taken means 6 less damage taken from a crit, which can be very important in later parts of the game.
It's just unfortunate that it is on a 5-move unit who can't fight.
So, in Conquest, if you watch Zoran videos, he is a big proponent of putting Elise into Wyvern. And Sakura kind of has something similar in her Skynet reclass, it's just not very good.
I think it's alright.
It's definitely usable. Being a Lance-locked unit is not the worst thing in the world. But if she goes into Skynet, she effectively becomes a slightly worse Tsubaki, who starts at E-rank lances, meaning she doesn't even have the might of the Iron Naginata to rely on.
Yeah, her combat in Skynight is incredibly pathetic for a very long time. It's just that the alternative is Shrine Maiden.
Yeah.
So it's like, do you want pathetic combat or no combat? She's stuck between a rock and a hard place for choosing how she wants to get early game EXP.
But having the 7-move and flights does allow her a lot more flexibility in applying her Quiet Strength aura. In some cases, like in Chapter 10, the Ninja Forest, she can go onto impassable terrain to protect herself while continuing to apply her aura to any units that need it, which can be very helpful in avoiding being hit by ninjas.
Right, and while flight becomes pretty useless late game in Birthright, there are a lot of maps in the early game where you can actually like fly over a bit of terrain and get some advantages. And you do get Tsubaki and Hinoka before all of those cases occur that you can use. But, you know, more flyers isn't necessarily a bad thing early on.
Her growth total is actually one of the highest in the game, but it isn't distributed in a way that you might really want. A lot of it is in Magic, which is a good stat to have, but so much of her growth total is concentrated into her luck stats that she neglects some of the more important stats, especially defense and strength. Which is not great when you are leveling up in Sky Knights. If you want to raise a combat Sakura, it makes her life more difficult than it needs to be.
Yeah, her HP total is, in Birthright, it's the 3rd highest, below only Hayato and Saizo.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's very good. I know her HP looks bad with that 45% personal. By Fate standards, that's not terrible. Kaden only has 45% personal.
Wow.
The main issue is just that Shrine Maiden and Sky Knight do nothing for her defensive stats.
Yeah.
So even though her personal growths look comparable to units with solid physical stats, like lined up with Kaden, she has the same personal HP, 5% less strength, and 5% less defense. But unfortunately, Sky Knight and Shrine Maiden just don't do anything to help those physical growths out. So she is left with the 60% magic being her most notable growth, but 60% magic, pretty good.
Yeah, it is generally better to be a magical unit in Birthright than being a physical unit, just because the magic weapons you get in this game are so good. The Bolt Naginata and the Horse Spirit especially are kind of crazy, but those are going to be so far away from her when she starts as a level 1 Shrine Maiden Stafflocked, and would need to either train her Lance rank in Skynet up to C, or staff spam to level 10 to promote to Onmyoji in order to even have access to any tome.
Yeah, and because her bases are so low, if she just staff spams up to 10 and then promotes to Onmyoji, her stats aren't really going to be impressive enough to exploit the Horse Spirit in the way that you'd want to. So it's pretty tough for her to actually find a position to get one of those weapons.
Yeah.
Once she gets there, she's fantastic, but it does take a lot of work.
So her pair-up stats are also pretty decent. At C support, she gives 1 magic, at B support she gives 1 speed, and at S support she gives an extra point of speed, which can be nice if you are making her a backpack for another good magical unit. I know Azama in particular, if you're raising him to be a Bolt Naginata Great Master, this is one of the better pair-ups to have on him.
Magic and speed are good. Azama, like you said, does struggle with both of those stats, so having a little extra in it is nice. He's also one of the earlier people who gives personal magic. So if you want to be doing Dragonstone Core and stuff and you need magic, she can be a C support that gives +3 magic, like as soon as you load up the game, because you have the support from Branch of Fate, which is nice. Orochi does join eventually and starts to give magic support, but Sakura's there first.
Yeah. If she does stay in Shrine Maiden, she gets a decent set of skills. Miracle, of course, is better than nothing. You probably don't want to put yourself in a situation where Miracle will activate, but if you end up in a situation like that, then it's better to have it than to not.
Yeah, and I mean, she does have a 70% luck growth,
Yep.
so it's not like the odds on it are bad, but yeah.
Then you get into Rally Luck, one of the better skills in the game for increasing your reliability. That's +4 to hit, avoid, and dodge are really nice, especially in late game where there are a lot of berserkers that want to crit you. Having 4 extra dodge is really impactful in some cases.
Yeah, Rally Luck it's incredible for reliability. If you ever look at a turn where you're seeing like shaky hit and avoid rates, if you ever go back and calculate what they would have been with Rally Luck, the results are always astounding for just how much impact that it has over a large enough enemy phase.
Yeah.
Because it's 4 extra hit against every single enemy, which if you're using imperfect hit rates to begin with, that's a huge swing. And if you're not, you probably got there through Rally Luck. It's an incredible skill.
Now, the unfortunate thing about the Shrine Maiden class is that instead of promoting to Great Master, it promotes to Priestess, which is a far worse class because in Birthright, there are no magical bows, while there are magical Naginatas in the Bolt Naginata. It's really unfortunate. And Sakura is the unit that suffers the most from this.
Yeah, in Revelation, Priestess is like way better because you get every magic weapon there, and the Shining Bow, has 39 might against flyers. But in Birthright, where there is no Shining Bow, she's stuck using Yumis, which are physical weapons, which obviously not ideal for her to begin with, though she does have alright strength, but then they're also incredibly inaccurate and 2-range locked. So it's just miserable for her.
Being 2-range locked is generally going to be worse than being 1-range locked or 1-2-range accessible, in Birthright especially because so much of your combat is going to be happening on enemy phase against big clusters of units that are charging at you. Being locked to a bow and being unable to counter a good amount of them without a My Castle drop sidelong Yumi, which many people aren't even going to be able to get in a playthrough, is really not ideal. Priestess does still have the monstrous base stat total of Great Master, but not being able to use a magical weapon really makes her suffer.
Yeah, she gets a huge stat increase from Priestess, but then she can't actually use the stat increase because she can't fight back with all that magic and speed and bulk that she gets. So it's sucky, especially because it does give you an amazing skill in Renewal.
Yeah.
Because Renewal's great.
You'll be needing that extra healing because those enemies that you didn't kill on enemy phase will still be alive and ready to attack you the next turn.
And even if you dip into Priestess and pick up Renewal and then leave and then get her into a combat class, it's like Renewal's still amazing there because her other innate combat class is Falconite, which has more movement than most of your army, so she's not going to be able to have healers keep up with her. So Renewal saves you healing actions. It's a fantastic skill, but Priestess is so bad in Birthright. Just sad because it's an incredible class in the other 2 roads, but no Shining Bow is very unfortunate for it.
Yeah. And of course, counter magic, one of the worst skills in the game. Being counter, but for magic, she might be able to counterattack a magic user if she's holding a bow, if you position her on just the right set of tiles, but why are you spending that long in Priestess?
Even if you do finally get the situation where Sakura can counterattack a sword, she's probably going to kill them if she's promoted level 15.
Yeah.
So it's it's not a good skill. It's really bad. You also don't get EXP if you kill off of counter.
Yeah.
So not worth it.
Although, if she does end up staying in the Shrine Maiden class line, she is probably going to be one of your primary staffers throughout the course of the game, and she will eventually get access to the higher ranked Staves in Birthright, and let's see just how bad those are. At C rank, you get access to the Wayne Festal. It restores 2 plus magic divided by 3 HP to an ally. It is 1 to 10 range, but the amount of healing that you'll be doing is so bad. It is 5 less healing than the Bloom Festal, which is already not going to be healing for very much. It's very tragic.
Yeah, it's terrible. If you had a 10 and 15 Sakura, you're probably healing 10 HP. Maybe you'll have a Vuln.
Yeah.
It's awful, especially because Birthright units don't have a lot of HP, so they can just use a concoction or an elixir to heal to almost full most of the time. The 10 HP top off from the Wayne Festal is just useless.
It's only really useful if you sent your ninja way far into the front lines and forgot to give them a concoction in battle preps. So, hey, having a Wayne Festal available is better than nothing, but generally not going to be your primary method of healing anyone. You do eventually at A-rank Staves, if you're ever going to get to A-rank Staves on Sakura's. You're probably not, but A-rank Staves does give the Great Festal, which gives that same amount of healing, which is 2 plus magic divided by 3, across all allies in a 1 to 10 range. It's really sad. You're healing 10 HP to 4 or 5 units, which is value, but there are only 2 uses of the Great Festal Staff. So, the situations where you'd want to be using it, you don't have that many Great Festals.
Yeah, it's bad. The main thing you're getting from high rank staves are the offensive ones in Silence and the Hexing Lead, right?
Yeah.
But Silence isn't that good.
I know Blue likes to use the Silence Rod because if a unit is tome locked, if they now all of a sudden don't have a weapon equipped, a lot of the times they won't move.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that can be helpful in controlling the amount of enemies that a unit takes on, and setting up kills on future turns. You do have 4 uses on each Silence Rod, so if you find uses for it, you will have probably enough to last you through the entire game, especially once you consider the one that you can buy from the Rod Shop. It's not that expensive at 2,400 gold either, so decently usable.
The concern I'd probably have using it with Sakura is that her skill is shockingly. It looks good when compared to her Norian counterpart, but it's still pretty unfortunate to the point where I probably wouldn't trust her to actually hit a silence, because if you're silencing someone, they're a magical enemy who's probably going to have high resistance. And while her magic's good and magic and skill do contribute in equal parts, it's definitely not the most accurate with staves, which is why I think Hexing Rod is kind of just a lost cause on her, because it's got a full 20 less hit than silence, which is already suspect.
Silence being 70 hit is really not great. If you're going to be using silence offensively, maybe have a backup staff user waiting after Sakura to trade it off of her and try to use it again.
Yeah, she could in theory like improve the reliability of the clear by either, and she could potentially be said backup staff user for someone else, like your second servant or something.
Yeah.
But in general, this is why I don't think that year rank on Sakura is in Staves is actually that big a deal, because it's like, what do you want from the higher staff ranks anyways? They're all so bad.
The only staff that you're going to be using most of the time is going to be the Sun Festal anyways. So just stick to what she's good at.
Yeah, the Sun Festal and the Rescue are the 2 best staffs in the game by a pretty significant margin, and both of those are unlocked ID rank, Rescue's even E rank. So there's not really much need to actually increase staff rank to be a good staffer in Fates.
If she doesn't want to go into Priestess, her other option is Onmyoji, another class that really does not do her favors defensively. It has one of the lowest HP and defense stats of any promoted class. It's really not great for a unit that already has a bit of trouble with bulk.
Onmyoji's defensive stats or Onmyoji's stats in general are some of the worst in the game. Unfortunately, it is the only way for her to use magic in her native Shrine Maiden line, so it's definitely the option that she has to go for. It does also give her Rally Magic, though, which is nice because she already has Rally Luck, so you're getting to stack rallies on the same unit, which is the high value. And it does let her, attack, so she can, occasionally pick something off, which, while it probably won't be productive, it does push her closer to learning Rally Magic.
And freeing up actions that would otherwise occupy your main combat units, generally a good thing for a support unit to be able to do, at least. Better than being staff-locked.
Right, and now she can actually apply dual strikes, so you don't have to worry about positioning her 2 away for quiet rank. You can just put her adjacent. So it's helpful, but it's not the biggest deal. But getting rid of the staff lock is huge.
Yeah. If you're not using Sakura as one of your main combat units, early promoting into Onmyoji to rush Rally Magic is probably one of your better options for early promotion candidates, although getting her to level 10 will make the level of early that you're promoting maybe debatable.
Yeah, if you break her first Bloom Crystal entirely, she gets about 15 EXP for use of it before she unlocks the Sun Crystal.
Yeah.
Which will get her to most of the way through level 3.
Yep.
And that's after breaking an entire staff and spending 20 turns healing. That EXP is just non-functional.
Yeah.
She'll probably be level 10 promoting around the time that some of your other units are level 19 promoting.
So she probably won't be a very good combat unit if she goes into Onmyoji after an early promotion. She will eventually get to Tome Fair if you somehow justify giving her experience through combats to level 15 promoted. And it can kind of help her continue to keep up with finishing off enemies that your other units left behind, but she still won't stand out. She's only really going to be there for support primarily, and that's something that she can do pretty well just because her quiet strength and dual rallies are just good enough to let her justify a deployment spot.
The 10 and 5 Onmyoji Sakura is a unit who can always justify her deployment slot because there aren't a lot of access to rally magic in Birthright. You get Azama for free, but Azama is probably the person you want to be targeting with rally magic, not the one using it. So it's really nice to have around on a second unit.
Just being able to get Orochi to reach one-shots thresholds can be useful.
Right, especially because if you are planning on capturing things, boosting Orochi is useful, and Orochi is another person who gets rally magic but would rather be the target of it than the user. Or if you're, say, bringing an underleveled Orochi into a scenario where you want her to capture something, being able to rally magic her and push her over the benchmark is always nice. There's a lot of applications for rally magic. It's very good.
And the additional rally luck to further increase her hit rates on those captures really does help because her hit rates are going to be kinda sketchy no matter what weapon she uses.
Yeah, Bushidan scrolls are not as accurate as the tomes that you get in Conquest, and even though Orochi's skill and luck are solid, her skill's actually pretty exceptional. She does take the hit penalty on captures, so she needs help to offset that.
Though if you want to make Sakura one of your more primary combat units, you probably want to be reclassing her to Skynet as soon as possible just so that she can start actually working on her weapon rank and doing things in combat before her stats are left way too far behind to catch up without spending the entire left half of Chapter 19, the Rainbow Sage map, to catch up.
Going through Skyline makes her EXP gain so much faster. Even though it's a little hard for her to find enemies to fight, because she's so underleveled, if she picks off a single enemy, that's going to be worth between 35 to 40 EXP, compared to the 15 she'd get from a Bloom Crystal. So even if she's still only picking off one enemy a turn, that's just as much as she was doing from staffing, except she's getting double or triple the EXP she would have from the staff use.
The faster you play, the less experience a Stafflocked unit will get, but the more experience you can cram into a Lancelocked unit. It rewards you for playing in the way that most people are going to want to work towards, rather than punishing you for playing in that way.
Yeah, and then it also gives you opportunities for more passive sources of EXP off of dual strikes, which, while they're not a huge amount of EXP, over a long enemy phase, if she's dual striking off of someone who she's quiet strength buffing, those chips are going to be worth, 5 to 10 EXP each, and if you kill 5 enemies that way, that's almost half a level, which is more than the 0 she would get doing the same thing while staff locked.
Yeah. And getting her dual strikes is actually really important in getting her closer and closer to C-rank lances, which is the big thing that she wants to reach in order to get to the Bolt Maginata. It's first available after Chapter 13 once you get to the level 2 armory, and once she gets there, she will actually be able to do real damage and not just have to pick up kills that are left behind by your other units.
Yeah, the Bolt Naginata is massive. It gets her to be one of the most offensively threatening units you can have. Its raw might is huge, and her magic is amazing, to the point where she can punch through basically anything with it. It's just, getting there is a little tricky.
Though she will still be in Skynights unless you get something through friendship or marriage, so It will still be an issue for her low defense and HP. She won't be able to completely generate her way through the rest of the game because Sky Knight does not have the best defensive bases, but if you want an enemy dead, Bolt Naginata Sakura is going to be one of your easier options because of that 7 to 8 move once she promotes, and access to magic weapons, which will hit on the lower resistance of most enemies in Birthright.
Yeah, and even the enemies who do have high resistance almost always have low HP. So like Sorks have huge res, but their HP is terrible, so she can still kill them, whereas high HP targets like Berserkers and Generals just don't have any resistance. So it doesn't matter what enemy type you're looking at, a Bolt Naginata Sakura can almost always kill them in ways that other units would struggle.
And the Skynet line will eventually get her access to a third rally option, which is Rally Speed. So eventually, if you want to do triple Rally Sakura for extreme roll compression, that can definitely be something that you do. Going into Onmyoji at level 5 promoted to get those 2 missing rallies, and then continuing to deploy Sakura, just triple rallying every turn.
Yeah, she ends up as this unit who does a lot of very nice things if you do the Falcon Sakura. 3 rallies, 8 move and flight for varying other units around. Then she'll have her E-rank Staves to occasionally top someone off at the Bloom Festal.
Yeah.
And then once you get C Lances, she can just, finish off any problem enemy. She does a lot of things, and while none of them are super high impact, all of them are useful.
She doesn't really care too much about the skills that Skynet gives outside of Rally Speed. Darting Blow does help her early game because doubling will double the amount of damage you do from her puny Brass Naginata hits, but she will eventually get enough speed that she's going to be doubling most things that you care about.
Yeah, Darting Blow is a pretty big deal for the first couple of maps because early on in Birthright, you're fighting a lot of Hoshiden enemy types, which tend to be these very fast, very fragile enemies like ninjas and samurais and diviners that are actually kind of tricky to double and need a little bit of stacking. But once you do double them, they basically just fold over. And Darting Blow basically lets Sakura skip the getting enough speed to double step and just work on augmenting her damage, which makes her actually pretty proficient at killing those Hoshiden enemy types. It's just eventually she levels speed and the enemies become Norian, and then it's rough.
The extra healing from Camaraderie is actually really nice in Sakura because most of the time she will want to be applying her Quiet Strength aura, and that has the same activation condition as Camaraderie. So an extra plus 10% healing at the start of every turn. Pretty nice, though not super game-changing.
Yeah, it's not crazy. Once she's in Sky Knight, notably, you are down a healer, so you do need to do a lot more vulns and finding passive healing than you would normally, so it does give her a way to heal herself. But it's not huge, because it's only 10%, and her HP is very low, so she's usually healing about 2 HP off of it.
Yeah.
Which, it's 2 HP, that'll let you survive an extra attack, but it's nothing crazy.
Yeah. Air superiority can be useful later in the game when you start going up against wyverns. Extra avoid does definitely help, although she will be facing weapon triangle disadvantage if she's using the Bolt Naginata, and the Bolt Naginata, like all magical weapons, will lower your avoid, so air superiority just slightly offsets that.
The bigger effect is that it does give plus 30 hit as well. Like I mentioned before, her skill is really bad. And the 2 weapons that she wants to be using the most, no matter what combat route she goes down, are the Bolt Naginata or the Horse Spirit, which are both 70 hit.
Yeah.
So any hit boosting skill on her is very appreciated, even if it's a niche one, but I probably wouldn't want to send her through Kinshi for it, because Kinshi's bases are so terrible. The main advantage is range, but she has range in every Lance using class, so Kinshi doesn't do much for her. It's hard to sell. It's a hard sell.
Though Amaterasu, if she does get Amaterasu, it can be nice. It heals 20% to every ally within her Quiet Strength range at the start of a turn. So, can be cool once you get there. The problem is getting there.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to send a unit through level 15 promoted in Kinshi. It's like a miserable time. But yeah, once you get there, she's doing a great job. She'd have 3 different rallies and the ability to both reduce damage and passively heal. She'd be great, but yeah, no, it wouldn't be worth it.
One thing I forgot to mention about being staff-locked in Birthright of all games is that Birthright is a game where if you're playing it in current year, you are probably going to be trying to raise a bunch of your weaker units, and that has a very bad impact on staff-locked units because those are the units that they're going to be healing most of the time. And I once healed a level 1 Hayato with a base Azama with a Bloom Festal. Azama got 1 experience. It's really bad.
Yeah, the Fates EXP formula is incredibly mean to a unit who is below your level. You basically get no EXP if you heal someone who's lower level than you, which isn't a huge deal for Sakura at first because she starts out at level 1, but once you get past that first Bloom Festal and get her to level 3, suddenly it becomes a lot more miserable.
Yeah.
Which is why at that point it's like, okay, she's gotten her B rank from the first Bloom Festal, let's just get out of Shrine Maiden.
Yeah. Sakura does get 1 friendship class, and that is Samurai. And I know a lot of people like Samurai Sakura because it allows the Vantage Life and Death Sorcerer build, which I know Mecha and Excadrill popularized.
I mean, it's a cool build. It unfortunately requires Korin Marriage and Birthright. In Revelation, you can get it from Leo. But it's a little hard to talk about a build that requires Korin Marriage because every single Birthright unit can become an unstoppable juggernaut who solos the game if they marry Korin.
And Sakura is generally not going to be the easiest unit to benefit from Korin Marriage just because she starts Staff Lock. She has a big hole to dig herself out of. And the reward you get, even after full hard investment in Sakura, will still require a lot more work than just giving soul on one of your tankier units and having them plow through the rest of the game without thinking.
Yeah, and the end result is the same. She becomes a unit who walks into range of as many enemies as she likes and kills all of them.
Well, not even that, because she still has to set up Vantage, which is not always the easiest thing to do.
Right, but even in the ideal circumstance where you've got everything set up and everything going, the end result is still just as good as, deploy Saizo with Soul.
Yeah.
So it's not great. In Revelation, it's a lot more justifiable because she gets it from Leo, who she's a pretty amazing pair-up for anyways. But in Birthright, I don't think it's really... It's fun and it's silly, but I don't think it's any good.
The one thing that saves the Samurai friendship for Sakura is that at least it gets done within 4 maps. Sakura doesn't really want Hana backpack, Hana doesn't really want Sakura backpack, but it only takes 4 maps, and you can probably fit them in during some of the easier grind chapters. So if you want to go for it, it won't bring you too far out of your way.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Unfortunately, it gives Shrine Maiden to Hana in the other direction, which I've heard people meme about a surprising number of times, but yeah, it's a very fast and easy friendship to do, but it's not doing much for either unit involved.
And Hana already has Shrine Maiden as her Heart Seal class, right? So why?
Yes, it's just saving you the Heart Seal.
Yeah.
It's letting you use a Friendship Seal instead so that you can Heart Seal someone else.
Duelist Blow, again, probably not going to be the most useful thing because she is already getting her avoid decreased by the Bolt Maginata. It's something. It slightly increases your action economy by saving you some extra healing that you would otherwise be doing to her occasionally, but not the most impactful skill. Vantage does help her though.
Yeah, it's Vantage is always good. She's less effective at exploiting it than some people because her offense is so fantastic. The main advantage is that if she misses...
Yeah, Vantage is primarily useful if you don't kill an enemy in 1 round. And some of your dagger using classes are going to have some trouble against the Wyvern Lords and Berserkers, killing those guys in 1 round. So having the extra 3rd chance to get that hit and kill them really benefits them in helping their bulk. Sakura's problem is her accuracy is not always great, so when she's facing weapon triangle disadvantage against those Berserkers and Wyvern Lords, those are going to be why she isn't going to be killing those in 1 round. So Vantage, allowing her
Yeah.
to sweep those up, helps her a lot.
Pretty much the only reason I could see why a trained Sakura would fail to one-round an enemy is because she misses.
Yeah.
And she does do that pretty often. So having Vantage to give her a third attempt is nice, but it's not nearly as good as it is for, say, someone who is just planning to 3-hit KO, because she could still miss the Vantage hit.
Yeah.
That would be very bad.
Yeah, especially against Berserkers.
Fortunately, she won't be facing crit from Berserkers because her luck is so huge.
Yeah.
But she will be facing a lot of damage.
Especially if she's in Sky Knight.
In Sky Knight, she's probably close to getting 2-shot by Berserkers, so that's not the plan.
Astra is really not great on Sakura because she is primarily going to be wanting to use the Bolt Naginata, which cannot proc skills like Astra. So this is mainly if you're going to use Tome Sakura, if you're going into Basara, and even then, her skill isn't great, so
Yeah, the proc rates on it are bad.
you're probably not going to get a proc rate much above 10% unless you have Quixotic, in which case the game's already over. So it can help when it activates, but not something to go out of your way for.
Yeah, it's overall not good. And the rest of the samurai skills don't really do her any favors either. She would never pick up a sword, so sword fare is basically useless. Seal strength is only useful if you don't kill, and like we said, she excels at killing things. That's
Yeah.
what she's best at, so it's just not good.
And going into Samurai for an extended period of time is generally not advisable because the Samurai classes have no magic base, or have very low magic bases, and even if she goes into Master of Arms to use the Bolt Naginata, she'll be doing less damage than if she was in Sky Knight, which will mean she will be having a harder time one-rounding, and she will just end up taking more damage, even though Master of Arms has higher defense.
You can definitely offset like a low magic based class with damage boosting skills, but Master of Arms doesn't provide any damage boosts until Life and Death, which is extremely late and also not a skill you want on a non-Vantage Sakura.
And even Vantage Life and Death Sakura with the Bolt Naginata is going to struggle to one-shot enemies. And she always faces the
for sure.
very looming threat of missing and just dying.
And you can fix that obviously with like Foreign Marriage for Heartseeker or something, but like we said, you can fix anything with Foreign Marriage, so it's not really that impressive.
So Sakura does notably have access to a lot of other classes through marriage, like every unit in Fates. So what are the ones here that stand out to you?
Big ones are Diviner and Cavalier. You can use Apothecary and Ninja have some benefits as well, but I think Diviner and Cavalier are the two big ones.
Diviner is probably the one that a lot of people are probably going to put her into, just because having her be Hayato's marriage partner is generally the more appealing thing to do if you want to use those two as combat units. Her boosting Hayato's magic can help, especially if you want to train him in a Diviner class, which I don't recommend doing, but if you want to do it, yeah, Sakura's probably a good option.
She does give a little bit of personal speed, so especially if you can't reclass both, you could technically Ninja Seal her to Sky Knight to give some speed to Hayato.
True.
To help him hit some doubling benchmarks early on, I suppose. But usually they are pretty easy to pair. Because, like you said, if you're training an underleveled unit, they're the unit you want to be healing a lot.
Yeah.
And you do get support points off of healing.
So Magic Plus 2 definitely does help. Any damage stacking skill is very impactful in Birthright, which really doesn't give you very many of those. But the main draw of the Diviner class line is its access to the Basara class, which is the bulkier lance class that she has access to, which allows her to continue to use the Bolt Naginata that she gets from her training in Sky Knights, but bring it into a class that, one, isn't weak to bows, and also has a defense stat. Not a great defense stat, but still better than Falcon Knights.
Yeah, it's the muscle mage classes, as some people call them, that are the sort of mixed magical physical classes. It gives her +2 defense and +2 HP on jumping from Falcon Knight to Basara, which is a pretty noticeable jump, especially because it also unlocks tomes for her, which gives her weapon triangle control as well. And there aren't a lot of places where you can always leverage full weapon triangle control, but being able to switch to something like a horse spirit or a rat spirit against a berserker is still a pretty massive bulk increase.
Yeah. The extra hit with the rat spirit compared to the Bolt Naginata is a very big deal. And the +3 defense, resistance, speed, and skill can also be extremely impactful if you end up going into Basara.
Yeah, so Basara overall, it's definitely her bulkiest option for a class just because of that flexibility and the just extra raw bulk that it has, because it's trying to also be a physical class. So it ends up being the class that gives her best overall combat of the ones that she has access to.
The skills are also pretty notable. She gets access to Rend Heaven, which often isn't going to be doing very much because she's a magic user and Rend Heaven takes the opponent's magic stats when doing the bonus damage calculation. So she really isn't going to be getting much out of Rend Heaven when she's going up against clumps of physical units. But the skill that you really want to be in Basara 4 is Quixotic, which is +30 hits and -30 avoid.
Yeah, like you said, Rend Heaven isn't doing much. The main niche for it is that, like, if you equip Horse Spirit for defensive reasons against a Sork, you might, like, fail a kill. But yeah, Quixotic is huge. Because the Bolt Naginata is tanking her avoid anyways, it's not something that's a huge deal anyways. You probably weren't planning on her dodging anything.
Yeah.
But the extra hit is massive, because +30 hit essentially means she will never miss again.
So if you want to use Sakura as your primary magical carry, then going into Basara is probably your best option if you just want to have the easiest time holding forward and not dying. She would want to be in Oni Savage and Oni Chieftain, but sadly, she does not have any way of getting into that class without Corn Marriage. So she's just stuck with the next best thing, which is Basara.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a pretty good alternative. Because Quixotic fixes her hit, and because her natural offense is so good that if she hits things, she'll kill them, it gets to the point where she basically has perfect offense, and then her bulk is also serviceable. It's not quite Oni levels of good, but she does rapidly approach perfect levels of combat if trained in Basara.
And you mentioned the other big class that she wants to be in is Cavalier from Silas Marriage. And that notably gives her one of the other rare damage stacking skills, which is Elbow Room, which is +3 damage, which will help to offset the lack of a magic base in the Cavalier class line, which will hurt her damage with the Bolt Naginata.
Yeah, so upon reclassing from Falcon to Paladin, she loses 4 magic, but then she immediately gains it back via Elbow Room and Defender, bring her up to the same offense that she used to have in Falcon Knight, but instead of having Falcon Knight's bases and Falcon Knight's bow weakness, you switch to Paladin, which has the same 7 defense as Basara, and still 1 more HP than Falcon Knight. So you didn't have to give up the 8 movement, you still got Basara's bulk out of the deal.
And the Cavalier class line is notable for just having good stats overall, especially when it comes to defense compared to a lot of the Birthright classes. Great Knight is very impressive if you just want Sakura to not die as she uses her good magic stat.
And then also remember that since you're getting Defender, you're getting another +1 on top of the Bolt Naginata's +1. It leads to her having a deceptively more defense than you would expect, putting her into either Paladin or Great Knight. And the classes aren't quickest, but she's so fast that she doubles everything in them anyways. So overall, it gives her very good combat without having to give up the mounted movement. And then you get rid of your bow weakness, which is pretty annoying late game in Birthright, but horse weakness basically doesn't exist. I don't think there's a single enemy with a beast killer in a main story chapter.
There is Benny who drops the beast killer, and there is Keaton who has Beastbane, but other than that...
I guess that counts.
Yeah,
it's not a beast effective weapon, but there is Beastbane. But regardless, like, it's a pretty massive bulk increase, and because late game Birthright is wide open empty fields, or, wide open empty indoor maps, switching from 8-move flying to 8-move mounted is basically no change at all.
It does hurt her a bit in some paralogs, which do have things like waste terrain and forest terrain, but in the main story maps, you will not notice a difference once you get past, outside of a small handful of chapters like chapter 20.
It's just an overall great combat class for her.
Yeah.
And then it continues to help her sort of utility role compression by giving her shelter.
Actually, shelter singing using Sakura is actually a really cool thing to do, because Sending Sakura forward with the second Sing that you get from Azura is going to help you make forward progress a lot faster than if you were doing it with, say, a ninja that 3-shots instead of Sakura who 1-rounds. It helps you make progress a lot faster and clear maps a lot faster.
Yeah, especially because she's also 8 move compared to those ninjas who are going to be 6 move. So she's moving faster, she's killing enemies faster, and then even if you aren't pushing her forward, she's still applying quiet strength to whatever setup you're trying to make. It's a really nice bit of role conversion. So I really like Paladin Sakura as an option for her.
Yeah. It takes her a while to get there, but once she gets going, yeah, it's hard to stop her from snowballing and becoming one of your best units.
And hilariously, because Paladin has such a good strength base, and then Defender and Elbow Room increasing that, she ends up also being perfectly competent with physical weapons in it as well.
Yeah.
So against those like Berserkers and Wyvern Lords that would give her trouble before, she can switch to a dual Naginata. And maybe struggle to one-round the Wyvern Lords, but she'll one-round Berserkers with it just fine, which helps her not always deal with the Bolt Naginata's accuracy issues, but sometimes it works.
And not having to deal with the reduction in avoid while also benefiting from dual Naginata weapon triangle advantage to actually not get hit by the Berserkers can really help her bulk.
Yeah, between her high speed and luck, when she's at dual weapon triangle advantage, she frequently just faces 0 hit from them.
Now, another funny option you can do with Sakura if you want to go full support is Troubadour through Jacob Marriage. And Troubadour is notably one of the best support classes in the game, giving access to 4 really good support skills in Demoiselle, Rally Resistance, Inspiration, and Live to Serve.
Yeah, if you go into Strategist, she will apply an aura that is giving -6 damage taken to male allies, along with 4 resistance. So that's -10 magical damage, which is a pretty massive defensive aura.
She is probably one of the best units to stack auras on just because she has a personal that is a damage-reducing aura to begin with. So stacking even more on top of that just makes those numbers go closer and closer to 0 damage taken, which can be really big, especially when you consider enemies as dangerous as the late game Berserkers.
Yeah, and then she also has every Hoshidan rally innately, so bringing one of the Norian rallies into the equation is nice.
And Live to Serve does help with sustain if she does end up going back into a class like Falcon Knight, because it lets her sustain herself along with another ally, which if you have Sakura in the front lines applying her auras, being able to heal from 2 range, get the Live to Serve bonus healing from herself, while continuing to be in range of other enemies, can give you a lot more flexibility in where you're actually placing her.
It's a somewhat niche situation that it comes up where it like does make a big difference, but it does just help your action economy in terms of getting people into position. So if you have this sort of mixed combat support, Falcon Knight Sakura, it's potentially useful. The issue is just that you do have to do a level in Maid, and she's gonna have E rank daggers then.
Yeah.
Which, while her strength is manageable in high strength classes, Maid is not one of those.
Yeah, though if you do eventually get her to having 4 rallies, then you're probably going to be having a good time with your other units.
Yeah, our Sakura, who has 4 rallies, and she can't even fit all of her rallies and auras into her skill set, so you do have to pick and choose.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty powerful unit to just be able to place her anywhere on the map. Basically have portable terrain, essentially,
True.
because the defensive buff is doing about as much for you as terrain. It's crazy.
The other classes that she gets are more funny options. She gets Ninja from Kaze and Saizo, or Apothecary from Azama. Now, Apothecary is probably the better of these, but it also requires you to raise your support rank with another Stafflocked at base unit, which is Azama. It's going to take you a while to do that.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to get 2 staffers to support each other because you can't even like pair up one from the other. If you're just interested in getting Sakura support, you can always just stick her as a backpack and have them fight.
Yeah.
Azama can't fight either.
So if you're doing the support, you're probably instant promoting Azama to Great Master at level 10, and having Sakura be his backpack. And that's generally something that can work because his combat is going to be self-sufficient enough that he doesn't really need extra support so her lack of giving para bonuses doesn't really matter for him.
Yeah, he'll be fine with just the like +1 speed she's giving from a B support or whatever, and he won't need any like other real stats because the Shrine Maiden pair-ups do suck. It's magic, luck, and resistance.
Though if she gets into Apothecary, Quick Salve and Potent Potion are kinda crazy. It really helps with your oxygen economy, being able to heal with a Vulnerary for 1.5 times healing on player phase, while also being able to take another action. Some of the most underrated skills in the entire game.
Since Sakura is a unit who has pretty much no way to get herself a form of self-sustain, she is almost entirely reliant on concoctions for self-healing, because like she can get Live to Serve or Renewal, but they're in classes that she doesn't want to be in. So Quick Salve is a way for her to both maintain her ability to instantly kill something on player phase and heal herself before the upcoming enemy phase, which is, it's a massive bit of utility for her.
Yeah.
It's massive for anyone who can get it, but it's especially huge if you don't have a form of self-sustain.
And Apothecary also gives access to, well, first let's talk about Merchant. Merchant lets her do the funny thing with getting Profiteer, which procs off the luck stats, giving a gold bar once she takes an action on the first 7 turns of any map. And since her luck stat is actually very real, Profiteer can end up getting you a net profit if you use Sakura enough. And Merchant isn't even the worst class for her because it lets her stay with Lance access. So Profiteer Merchant Sakura can be very funny.
She's probably getting to, even if you like early promote her and all that, she's probably getting to around like 20 luck pretty fast.
Yeah.
And if you don't early promote her and you go through Sky Knight or something, she's probably getting into like the 30 range or 40 with a rally luck, which is getting you a gold bar or 2 every map, which adds up pretty fast. But it is notably just a meme. It's silly and it's fun, but it's mostly just silly.
But if you want Sakura to be the one that kills the final boss, Spendthrift is there. It's probably not going to do much else, but hey, why not?
You'll probably need it. It's a pretty big damage stack increase.
Yeah.
She does have native life and death, so... Oh, and she has Snake Spirit. She'd probably actually be really easy to kill Garen with.
But the main draw of the Apothecary class for most units is, of course, going into Mechanist, which is considered to be one of the best classes in the game. Just having daggers along with a defense base that's higher than Master Ninja is really nice. But Sakura isn't really the unit that takes advantage of that the best.
As a Mechanist, her stats aren't gonna be amazing. It doesn't provide any sort of damage fixing for her, which normally isn't an issue because she's using the huge Bolt Naginata, but she's going to be stuck using Iron Shurikens for a while, which aren't going to do much damage. And then once she unlocks the Flame Shuriken, it's the lowest might of the, like, magical weapons.
Yeah.
So 9 might looks impressive off of Sakura's magic stat, but it's 9 might off of just her magic with no class bonuses and no skills.
Yeah.
It's rough.
And she's still going to be suffering from the same bad matchups against Berserkers and Wyvern Lords, except now she struggles to kill them even more because, well, the might of the Flame Shuriken and the lack of a class base in magic in Mechanist really hurts her.
And the matchup that's going to become truly terrible is Bone Knights.
Yeah.
Because they have weapon triangle advantage against her, and they have high resistance.
Yeah.
So she is really going to struggle to kill those, which makes it a pretty hard sell over Falcon Knight, because the main matchup that you'd leave Falcon Knight for is...
Although, going all the way to level 15 promoted in Mechanist will get you access to Replicate, and having 2 copies of Sakura's Quiet Strength aura, along with any other support skills that you pick up along the way, can be nice, but getting her to promoted level 15 is quite a big ask.
But like late game Birthright maps are really big, and you really want to be sending multiple Juggernauts in different directions. And being able to have Sakura go with both of them at the same time is nice, but yeah, it would just be so rough to get.
In late game Birthrights, a lot of your good Juggernauts are going to have their own methods of self-sustain, whether it be through something like Quick Salve, Potent Potion from the Apothecary class line like Oboro and Azama have, or just continuing to chug concoctions themselves, you probably don't need an extra Sakura.
Yeah, it's the type of thing that if it was easy to get, it would be really nice, but level 15 in Mechanist is such a huge sink.
Ninja is a similar story, except there are even worse skills in the form of Lock Touch and Poison Strike on the way to getting to Mechanist. And she generally doesn't want to be in Master Ninja just because it complements her stat line even worse than Mechanist.
Master Ninja just makes her, like, insanely overkill fast in a way that's pretty much useless. At least the Ninja class line does have an unconditional damage boosting skill, but it's so late, and it's a class that she doesn't want to be in that it's just not worth it.
Yeah. So, if you're going to be using Sakura over the course of a normal playthrough, if you're not going to be super hyper investing into her, you just want to use her as a support unit, you either staff spam to level 10 and get her into Onmyoji and rush Rally Magic, or you turn her into a Skyline pretty early on so that she can actually gain experience. And if you do that, well, she does continue to face some pretty notable competition, because you have another staff-locked unit that you want to be staff spamming with to get to promotion, and that is Azama, who also has pretty impressive stats once he is able to actually use them. Let's say you get Sakura to level 15 in Sky Knights. Maybe you want to have her have real stats, get her to C rank lances to actually make her useful in combat without completely nerfing her combat abilities by promoting at level 10 and not having enough stats to do anything. If you do that, then her stats don't really compare very favorably to Azama, and she will have generally worse stats on the physical end without having too much more magic to make up for it. Her speed does make a pretty significant difference because she's going to be in Falcon Knights rather than Azama's Great Master. But Azama also has a lower internal level if he promotes instantly than a level 15 promoted Sakura. So Azama is going to be slowly making up for the stat deficiencies in magic and speed a little bit faster than Sakura can level up.
Yeah, it creates an interesting comparison to them where Azama has pretty clearly better combat. He's bulkier, he hits harder. Eventually Sakura will unlock the Bolt Naginata to be a little better in that way, but it's pretty clearly a win for Azama in terms of raw stats. But what Sakura does provide is her incredible personal skill and the extra movement, and her potentially an extra rally. There's some more interesting trade-offs between these two that I think a lot of people just miss and write off Sakura because her staff rank's lower. The trade-offs between them are much closer than I think most people would think.
Sakura will definitely justify a deployment spot in a lot of maps just because Quiet Strength is so good, especially when you're raising some of the weaker units in Birthright, that Azama just does not have. He will have better heals due to his instant access to the Sun Festal until you get Sakura access to the Sun Festal, in which case her magic will just be a bit higher once they reach similar levels.
And notably in this leveling here, the Shrine Maiden Sakura is only going to be, since she went to level 3 probably, she either broke her Bloom Festal and got D, or was just a couple uses away from breaking it for the reclass. So she'll be pretty close to D rank, even if she isn't quite there.
So Azama is some pretty stiff competition, but Sakura definitely has reasons to be deployed on given playthroughs that Azama isn't always going to be able to fill. There are other ways to focus more on Sakura to make her one of your better combat units. Of course, the more conventional way that every unit can really do is by marrying her to a ninja and making her a mechanist, and this really isn't going to be the best way to be using her. If she is in level 5 mechanist, compared to the standard physical carry in Birthright, which is level 5 Master Ninja Saizo, well, Sakura is going to be even more work to get to that point because she needs to raise supports to get Vantage and the Ninja class, while Saizo has it all innately, and once you get them on the same level, Sakura will have 4 less HP, 5 less effective attack, 1 less speed, 16 less hits, 5 less avoids, 10 less crits, 3 less dodge, 3 less defense, and just 1 more resistance. Generally, not a favorable comparison if you're going with physical Sakura. It's just not the thing you want to be doing with her.
Right. She's just clearly worse as a physical unit, despite her physical growth, like, looking pretty impressive. Like, in terms of physical stats, she's not that much behind Saizo in the growth. But yeah, it doesn't end up working out for physical Sakura. The main advantage that she gets is that upon reaching C rank, she'll be able to switch to being mixed to improve some occasional matchups.
Yeah.
But it's overall substantially worse than using another physical carry. So physical carrying with her is not the way to go.
She can do better magical damage than Saizo, if Saizo also uses the Flame Shuriken, but it's not even by that much, because Saizo will have an probably extra Shuriken rank, which will further increase his damage. So Sakura's lead is only going to be like 3 once you get to level 5 promoted, so it's not great.
Yeah, and this type of lead just isn't worth.
The amount of investment you have to put into Sakura to get her here, marrying her to Kaze, and just spending so much time to get her to promote at level 20 in order to be a worse Saizo. You really don't want to go this route when you're using Sakura.
So even though Mechanist is the best option for most Birthright units, the reason why it is because even though Shurikens lack stats, they make up for it with 1-2 range, but Sakura just fundamentally has 1-2 range in almost every class. So Mechanist doesn't give her anything new, and instead she's forced to deal with all of the downsides of Shurikens, like their low might.
Yeah.
And the relatively lower bulk of dagger classes compared to other classes.
Now, if you want to make her a combat carry, you generally want to put her in a magic class like Basara, through Hayato or Kaden marriage, and this gives her very impressive stats. Her magic attack in Basara is 36 at level 5 promoted after leveling to 20. It's kind of crazy. And she can smuggle in Darting Blow to help with her lacking speed, so her combat is going to be very impressive, like Scepti said. She will probably be able to one-round basically any enemy that she goes up against if she's in Basara. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's just such a ridiculous amount of magical attack on a unit who, if she ever fails to double something, she can just player phase it and Darting Blow, and 21 AS it's good enough for Birthright. And then because of Basara's good natural bulk, combined with her alright defensive growth, she ends up as this very sort of weird mixed tank in a way that a lot of Birthright units don't, that both her defense and her resistance are alright.
Though she does face some pretty stiff competition in the form of Rinka. Now, Rinka doesn't even need to use a Heart Seal to get into Sky Knight to build her Lance rank, and marry Hayato in order to even get access to the class that she wants to be in. Rinka already starts as an Oni Savage, and can just use a Master Seal to promote into Oni Chieftain, and be one of the best physical walls in all of Birthright, with a whopping 8 extra defense over Sakura, meaning that when you're going against clumps of physical units, if you just want someone that can take care of them and not die, Rinka is probably going to be the one you go to.
Rinka's huge physical defense makes her just the overall better unit in this comparison. But it's not as though Sakura doesn't have some leads. Because like I said earlier, she does have that mixed bulk that very few units in Birthright have. But then her magical attack lead is even bigger than it looks here because of the fact that she's using lances instead of axes. The hardest benchmarks to reach magically are like sorcerers and bow knights. Bow knights carry bows and swords, so both of these units are forced to disadvantage against them. But against sorcerers, Sakura actually gets advantage, which pretty much no magic user besides her does, which makes it really easy for her to meet sorcerer one-round ranges that a lot of other mages would struggle with. But besides that, it's rough, and that's really the only lead that she ends up getting, is that better matchup against magical enemies compared to Rinka, whereas Rinka just has that huge defense lead it's hard to contest.
Sakura does have notably higher hits than Rinka using the Bolt Axe, but Rinka has so much defense that she effectively has unlimited tries to get those hits in, while Sakura does have to eventually get healed. Sakura is definitely better at making forward progress just because enemies that are in front of her will probably die, while Rinka will probably take an extra turn or two to kill them all. But Rinka is also just a lot easier to place into a group of enemies and end turn, and they're all dead.
I will say, if you are trying to optimize very heavily for turn count, there's a lot to be said for that extra offense, that sort of ability to make forward progress and that forward momentum a lot easier. The issue is just that Sakura is so much harder to train.
Yeah. Optimizing for turn count and also raising Sakura aren't very compatible goals.
Yeah, it's rough. It is definitely possible.
There are some really advanced feeding routes that can raise Sakura. My Chapter 8 clear does raise Skyline Sakura to get to a reasonable level, but the amount of work it takes and the resources that it takes from a lot of your other units is a trade-off that you might not want to make.
Yeah, it's definitely the type of thing that it's more... If you are very experienced with Fates and you're looking for a project, Combat Sakura is shockingly competent when pushed to its absolute ceiling.
Yeah.
It's just very difficult to figure out how to push it there. The more interesting route, if you're just sort of a casual player, is to sort of give up on those early turns and just sort of beat her at your own pace instead of heavily trying to optimize it. And then you still get the payoff, you just, it's not necessarily efficient.
Now, being in Basara, Sakura also has access to the Horse Spirit, which boosts her defenses by a very significant amount. She gets to 20 defense, 20 resistance, which is already going to be significantly higher than Saizo's bulk, which is 19 defense, 16 resistance. And she is also going to be hitting on magic with her very high magic attack, which is currently at 28, even with the low might of the Horse Spirit. So Sakura in Horse Spirit is just a unit that can be placed in a group of enemies and kill them just as well as Saizo can. Her hit rate is definitely going to be worse, but she does have the tools to attack on player phase, while Saizo doesn't always, thanks to his bad personal skill in pyrotechnics.
And then she does end up with just exceptional mixed bulk thanks to the Horse Spirit's boost here. And the crazy part is that she's using a 4 might weapon with only a +2 boosting skill, and she is hitting just as hard as, she's 1 point lower than someone who is using the bolt axe.
Yeah.
So she basically gets all of the payoffs of the Horse Spirit without the downside. So unlike someone like Rinka, who we can see here has to either choose between offense or the insane bulk, she gets both, she just never quite gets as much bulk. Yeah. So it's a very impressive stat line to be pulling this off the Horse Spirit, to actually one-round things with it.
It's a very exclusive club that actual good Horse Spirit users in Birthright occupy. It's like Rajat, Investment Hayato, and Sakura.
A defense-stacked Azama can get there. Yeah. But it's there aren't a lot of people who can exploit this incredible weapon, and she's one of them.
Oh, and of course Corrin, but Corrin's good at everything, so...
Yeah.
But the route that Scepti did during her playthrough was going through Paladin using Silas Marriage, and speaking of good turn counts, having 8 move really does help with that regard. So, Elbow Room, Defender, and Shelter, really nice skills to have on a unit that you want to be sending out all the way in front of all your units and killing all the things that need to be killed.
Yeah. In terms of if you're trying to sort of both optimize for turns and use Sakura and sort of push her to that ceiling, which, like you mentioned, I was doing pretty recently, I really do think this is one of the better routes to go for. She has a combination of mixed bulk and fantastic offense and a positional skill.
Yeah.
With 8 movement. It is a fantastic unit.
So, if you want to compare Paladin Sakura with Basara Sakura, Paladin Sakura actually comes out on top when it comes to defenses, having an extra point in defense and resistance thanks to Defender, though she does have 1 less HP on average at level 5 promoted. Her magic attack is 5 less, but in general, if you're using the Bolt Naginata in Basara, you're going to have overkill damage, so...
Yeah. pretty much the only ranges that Sakura even like needs to stack attack for is Bonites.
Yeah.
Everything else she basically just does with her raw magic and the Bolt Naginata. So it's really not a huge issue to miss out on the Basara damage. It basically just means occasionally she needs like a rally magic to clear a Bonite. And in exchange you get a little bit of extra bulk and a lot of extra movement.
Of course, Basara can just go into the Horse Spirit instead of the Bolt Naginata and just have better stats. But that also requires training her tome rank, which isn't always the easiest thing to fit in.
Yeah, surprisingly, it is easier to develop her lance rank than her tome rank, just because lances in Birthright are so exceptionally good, especially if you are one of the rare units who can use the Bolt Naginata from 2 range. She gets all of the crazy useful lances that are effectives and dual Naginata, then unlike every other lance user, she has actual 1-2 range.
If you're training Skyline Sakura, a big source of experience is going to be chapters 14 and 15 for the big triangles of courses on the left side that you can just use the sword catcher on and kill all of them, and the wolf skin, which you can use the beast killer on. And Sakura notably has flight, which allows her to get to some of the wolf skin that a lot of your units are going to take a while to get to. So that's one thing that she has over a lot of your other units in that map.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to get a 2 or a 3 turn clear of, maybe not 2, but 3 is pretty trivial while using Sakura, while still giving her a ton of EXP just because she can fly over the mountain and do the entire north side.
Yeah.
Because the wolf skin are such free EXP. So she can get a massive amount of EXP while also reducing your turn count if heavily optimized. It's very good.
Yeah. The main issue is getting her to D-rank lances. I guess if you really want to go for turn counts, you could do Sakura staff spamming early on, and then using the second set of heart seals that you get after chapter 13 to reclass her into Sky Knights for chapter 14, and using the arm scroll to give her the sword catcher and beast killer access that she needs to actually gain all the experience that she needs to promote at level 19 or 20. And that could actually really save turns if you want to use Sakura long term.
Yeah, if you're willing to devote the arm scroll to her, that's probably one of your more practical option. If you're not willing to devote the arm scroll to her, then you do have to scuff her through early game Sky Knight. If you know a lot about how to optimize Fate, it's not as bad as it might seem. Every time she gives an empty dual strike on someone who you're like if you were just applying quiet strength to Silas while he javelins things, her little dual strikes are still building up lance rank. And if you do occasionally pick off a ninja or a samurai, that also gives a little bit of lance rank. And you do only have to get 20 combats for chapter 14 and 15. You don't have to worry pretty much at all about her level. It's just the lance rank.
You will have to figure out a way to stack her bulk in order to make her survive the clumps of Cavaliers and Wolfskin. The thresholds aren't hard to reach. She doesn't have the ability to benefit from her own aura though, which does make things a bit more difficult to bulk stack.
Yeah, notably the Wolfskin in particular aren't too bad because you have the Dragon Vein on that map that drops all enemy stats by 4, and since you're gonna be clearing it in under 4 turns, if you're planning on using Sakura in there, it won't wear off. You'll have the Dragon Vein for the entire map.
Yep. So yeah, there is a lot you can do with Sakura once you get past her very difficult start. Actually raising her to promote at level 20 is so much easier than doing so with your other Stafflocked unit in this game, which is Azama, that she is promising once she gets there. She doesn't have quite the monstrous bases that Azama has once he gets out of a Stafflocked class, but her ability to hit so hard on the magical end really carves out a niche for her that not very many units in this game can fill. If you choose to raise Sakura, there are quite a few trade-offs that come with it. You do need to spend a heart seal if you want her to reach her full potential as a combat unit, which means you're basically taking that away from either early Hayato, early Jacob, early Felicia, or if you're crazy, early Azama. But if you're willing to do that, and you're willing to get her the experience from chapters 14 and 15, where she is also competing with Oboro and Silas and Hinoka and Azama and Mozu and Tsubaki, if you're willing to put in those resources, she will be a very impressive unit.
Right. And the early heart seal is very unfortunate because Birthright does only give you one early heart seal to play with. So she is forcing you to either use that or the arm scroll early on, but the arm scroll is also an incredibly flexible resource that could go to anyone else. So it is kind of hard to justify those things. The payoff is truly incredible. If you go the whole 9 yards with her, you get an 8-move unit with nearly perfect combat and a ton of utility function. But even if you don't, she still ends up as pretty much the best support unit you can expect. She can heal, she can rally, she can provide auras, which is every support function you can really get from a unit in Fates besides positional.
Yeah, triple rally plus an aura on wings is kinda crazy.
Yeah, it's a really good unit, and there's a lot of payoff to it, but it does suck that she comes at the cost of... There are a lot of other really good Heart Seal candidates, and because she needs Heart Seal and the EXP, it's pretty hard to justify her. That said, Birthright does give you a lot of really broken combat units for free, like Ryoma and Yukimura and Izana. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad trade to trade some EXP from your combat units to put one into this more support-focused unit. But it isn't that obvious. It's not that clear of a trade that's good, because there will be a long time where you'll be wishing you had a higher level Oboe.
Probably not something that you'll be doing on every single playthrough, but if you don't really have other plans for that Lance experience pool, you only really need to train one of your good physical units with that pool of Lance experience. So for your second units that gets to benefit from all of that experience, yeah, Sakura might not be your worst option on some of your playthroughs.
Yeah, and even if you don't give her all of that, she still performs pretty well just because Quiet Strength is so powerful. And if you aren't reclassing her to Sky Knight, she'll get to D-rank Staves quick enough that she'll be a better healer than Azama anyways. So she's still really useful even if you aren't willing to Heart Seal her and Falcon Knight train her, even if she basically just never ends up promoting at a competent time. So she's got a lot going for her as a unit.
The biggest issue with actually raising her is building up her support rank, because you want your healer to be able to be flexible with where they are, not being paired up and wasting their potential ability to heal on that turn. So getting her to marriage or to an A+ with Hana will take more time than you really want, but since she has so much utility, she's going to be able to be deployed on most maps that you want her in anyways, so that's not the biggest issue. But it's just another thing to keep in mind when you're trying to make the most of a unit that's mostly just in a support role.
Yeah, it's really hard for her to get support points. Pair up isn't strong, so she's not a good backpack. Her staffing only gives her 1 support with a unit per turn, I mean, so it's not doing much,
Yeah.
and then it's spread out across a bunch of different units. And then her other utility functions, like the rallies and the auras, while they're useful and providing a lot of benefit, you don't get supports off of them. So her supports go up very slowly, even when she's doing everything that she's supposed to. So it's very hard to get her paired off, and it's hard to get her A+ supports. But the thing is that those unlock new classes and new skills, but if she's already doing her function, she doesn't necessarily need those. It's mostly just that it's slowing down your access to a paralog that you could be using to help your other units.
Alright, if there's nothing else you have to say, is there anything you want to plug at the end of this video?
Thank you. Yeah, let me, I guess I'll just mention I have a YouTube channel. I upload silly little videos. Check it out. It's Scepti on YouTube. Please subscribe if you're interested in seeing more of me.